Hey, what's up? What's up? I am your host, the one on the Stock Sniper, and man, it's going down. JD Vance talks Minneapolis, and guess what? Jacob's Frey blast Vance. Man, it's a lot going on out there in Minneapolis, man. And let's see, let me get all this ready to rock and roll, man. We're gonna react to this. Appreciate y'all for joining me. I'm your host, the one on the Stock Sniper, man. There's a lot going on. It definitely is, and we're going to react to it like we always do. Yeah, I had some good workouts today. We are supposed to have some kind of freeze, so we're preparing for that. You know, hope everybody is safe. There's a freeze going all over basically the South, and I'm hoping that everybody is safe. Make sure everything's straight. You know, and stay warm. And guess what? If you locked up in the house, golly, make sure you are subscribed to Stock Sniper TV. So, and make sure you click on the notification bell so you will know every time Stock Sniper goes live. So, I mean, we're gonna react to a lot of positive things, no negative things. Uh, we ain't tearing nobody down. We're doing what we're supposed to do over here, and that's enlighten the people and put something on your mind so you can prepare you and your family to whatever is to come from now and the future. So, with that being said, sit back, chill. We're going to react to JD Vance and all the problems that's going on with ICE. You know, it just depends on what you think and how you feel about the situation because Donald Trump already told us that they were going to be super, super strict on illegals and they're going to do whatever they can to get them out of the country if they got to go door to door. And, seems like that's happening. And if you agree with it or not, hey, most of America voted for it. You know what I'm saying? So they basically have a green light. You know what I'm saying, chat? They mostly have a green light and they're going to do what they said they was going to do. So let's appreciate y'all for joining and let's have a good stream. Let's have a good stream chat. And here we go. This is our Vice President, JD Vance.
Just a few things at the outset, just about what I've learned today and what I'm trying to do here. First of all, I want to give a shout out to the Annunciation school shooting families because, the last time I was in Minneapolis, it was, of course, to meet with some of those families. I understand that a couple of the students have made near miraculous recoveries, and just that was a very special moment for me to be invited into that community at a time of grief, and I hope that all of them know that though I didn't get to see them this particular time, I've been thinking about them and their families quite a bit. Now, to talk about what I am here to do, which is federal law enforcement to enforce our immigration laws, I want to say just a few things. First of all, I wanted to meet with business leaders, with ICE officers, with local law enforcement to try to understand a little bit better what's going on so that we can tone down the temperature a little bit, reduce the chaos, but still allow us as a federal government to enforce the American people's immigration laws. That is the purpose of my visit. Now, this is step one or step two of that process. There's going to be a lot of work that follows through from here. I'm happy to talk about that, but I think I learned a few things that were very important. So number one of the things I learned is that the guys...
What's up, Chad? We got 46 people in the building right now. I need everybody to double tap the screen. If we can get about 30 or 40 of y'all to double tap the screen, that way the notification can be sent out and YouTube will notify everybody that we are watching JD Vance give us remarks and explanation on what's going on in Minneapolis with these ICE raids and what's going on with all that. Double tap the screen, chat. All you got to do is double tap JD Vance, and that will activate the like button. Thank everybody for coming and joining me. I hope you are safe. If you are in the winter storm, about to be affected by the winter storm, I hope you and your family are safe, and I hope y'all are warm, and I hope y'all are paying attention to Stock Sniper TV. You know, I'm trying to entertain as much as I can and educate as much as I can and learn as much as I can. So with that being said, guys, let's continue. Please do me a favor and double tap the screen.
Behind me are doing an incredible job, and frankly, a lot of the media is lying about the job that they do every single day. Now, it doesn't mean that there aren't occasionally stories out there, there aren't occasionally videos out there that suggest that these guys, or at least some of the people who work for them, are not doing everything right. But very often, if you look at the context of what's going on, you understand that these people are under an incredible amount of duress, an incredible amount of chaos, and because of a few very far left agitators, a lot of these guys are unable to do their jobs without being harassed, without being doxxed, and sometimes without being assaulted. That's totally unacceptable. And that's one of the things that I want to send a message to is, yes, come out and protest me, protest our immigration policy, but do it peacefully. If you assault a law enforcement officer, the Trump administration and the Department of Justice is going to prosecute you to the fullest extent of the law. And I wanted to show some support for these guys who, frankly, are operating in a very, very tough environment. I heard a lot of stories today about that I think drives home just how chaotic the environment on the ground here has already gotten. For example, did you know that within the last, I think, week or so, maybe even more recently than that, you had a couple of ICE officers who were off duty, who had been doxxed online, who were sitting and having a meal at a restaurant in Minneapolis when a bunch of agitators showed up, locked the door, made them feel like they were in danger for their lives, and then, of course, it was federal law enforcement officers who had to come up, lower the temperature on the situation, and actually get those two off-duty officers to a point of safety. Now imagine, if you would, your life and your perspective on law enforcement if you can't even go to a restaurant without some agitators locking the door and making you feel like your life is in danger. That is the environment that has been created, I think, by a lot of very, frankly, far left people, but also by some of the state and local law enforcement officials who could do a much better job in cooperating and working. And by the way, I'm not talking about the cops, who these guys told me on the ground, the cops are very sympathetic to what they're dealing with. I'm talking about the state and local elected law enforcement officials who could do a lot better job in making their lives a little bit easier. And in the process, they would make the lives of all Minneapolis residents easier, and that's what we want. We want to be able to enforce the immigration laws on the one hand, while on the other hand, we want to make sure that people in Minneapolis are able to go about their day. And I want to say just one last point on this. So I heard from a business leader today who told me a very tough story, and I think so much of what's gone wrong in Minneapolis is people not trying to understand the perspective of somebody else. Try to understand what somebody else is experiencing, whether they're a law enforcement officer or anybody in the community here in Minneapolis. So they told me a story about this manufacturing facility where an illegal immigrant was being arrested. And as these employees are going into the manufacturing facility, all of a sudden an illegal immigrant shows up. They don't know it's an illegal immigrant. And then a bunch of ICE officers descend. Now, these people just want to go to work. They want to go to work safely. And now all of a sudden there's a major law enforcement operation happening right outside their place of business. Now, from one perspective, I certainly understand why a business leader or why an employee would say, whoa, what's going on? It's a little scary, no matter your position in life, if a bunch of cop cars show up and they're arresting somebody. Now, the additional context is that we know that people online have been encouraging illegal immigrants that one way they can evade arrest is by showing up at a legitimate place of business, making it impossible for these guys to actually enforce our immigration laws. So while I can understand the perspective of somebody who doesn't want to see an arrest happen at their place of work, I can also understand the perspective of our immigration enforcement officers who have to do their job and can't allow a heckler's veto over our immigration enforcement. And so much of what's gone wrong is the failure to do that. And here's the point. We can do a good job of enforcing our immigration laws without the chaos, but it actually requires the cooperation of state and local officials. If you look at blue cities and blue states, red cities and red states, you go to Austin, Texas, or Memphis, Tennessee, you go to the state of Texas, obviously a very red state, or the state of Tennessee, a very red state, but you've got blue cities within those states, you do not have this level of chaos. The reason why things have gotten so out of hand is because of failure of cooperation between the state and local authorities and what these guys are trying to do. We have a ton of resources, a ton of ICE agents in this city right now that I would rather us not have. I'd love to send those guys home. They're not even doing targeted immigration enforcement. They are trying to protect ICE officers who are doing immigration enforcement, because when a crowd surrounds them and these guys call 911, the local officials, the local cops have been told to stand down. So we have people here who aren't even doing immigration enforcement, they're doing force protection, so that if a rioter tries to ruin the life or assault an ICE officer, they're actually protected. Now, why doesn't it make more sense for the local cops to get involved in that situation? Why not just have the mayor or the local officials tell the police officers, you know what, if an ICE officer is being assaulted by a far-left agitator, you are invited, you should actually help them. That's what would work out in any normal situation, and that's what happens in nearly every jurisdiction, red or blue, in the United States of America. The reason it hasn't happened here is because the local authorities have been told, stand down, do not help ICE, promote the violence, promote the agitation, but don't do anything to lower the temperature and lower the chaos. That's a problem. Here's another example of how the lack of cooperation between state and local officials makes it harder for us to do our job and turns up the temperature. Let's say, for example, we have a criminal migrant who is a sex offender. And let's say that we've got to go and arrest that person who, Democrat or Republican, wants a sex offender living in their community. I would assume, I would hope that most people don't. But because they're an illegal alien, we don't know their last address. We may have known their address 3 years ago, but we don't know their address now. What we'd like to do is talk to local officials and say, you know what, according to the Medicaid rolls, where was the last address this person was domiciled? Or according to a SNAP application, a food stamps application, maybe that could give us insight to where this person is today. Or maybe they had some local court trouble. We could go to the local courthouse or even the local jail and try to find where this criminal sex offender is today. The local authorities have been told, do not cooperate. So these guys are trying to go out and enforce the law. They're trying to arrest sex offenders, but they're trying to do it in an environment where local officials have been told, do not help them, do not provide intelligence about where these sex offenders might be. This is disgraceful. And there are a lot of things that all of us could do better to lower the temperature, but the number one thing that I learned today is that the best way to facilitate reasonable enforcement of the law, but also to lower the chaos in Minneapolis, would be for state and local officials to cooperate. Now, I will say, on one final positive note, I actually think that there's some hope, some reason to think that there's going to be better cooperation in the weeks and months to come. I think that because I've talked to some of the local officials here. I think there are reasons to believe that these people are going to step up and actually ask the cops to protect our ICE officers when they're being assaulted, who are going to ask the local courts to cooperate with getting criminal sex offenders out of our community. That's a good thing. That's the good news, and that's something I'm going to work on when I get back to Washington. But please, if you're a local official, if you're the mayor of this town, if you have any influence over those people, just tell them to cooperate. Because we could have immigration enforcement operate as smoothly and without the chaos that we see in Austin, Texas, or Memphis, Tennessee, or even rural parts of the state of Minnesota. All we need is a little cooperation. I guarantee you, we're going to do the best to be professional, to respect people's rights, to not do anything that we don't have to do in order to enforce immigration laws, but it would make our lives a lot easier, it would make our officers a lot safer, and it would make Minneapolis much less chaotic if we had a little bit of cooperation from the state and local officials. With that, I'll shut up and take some questions. Thank you, guys.
Vice President Vance, a local school district here is alleging ICE agents detaining a 5-year-old after preschool on Tuesday. We've also seen multiple American citizens detained by ICE, harassed by ICE.
Before JD Vance takes questions, I need everybody to hit the subscribe button right at this time. Take the time out right now, right before we see the questions. Take the time out right now to hit that subscribe button. We got 220 people in the building. I know more than 19 people is enjoying this stream. Come on now, guys. Do me a favor and hit the like button. and subscribe to the channel so we can carry on with the stream. I know more than 19 people or 14 people like this stream. Y'all do me a favor and hit that like button. Can we get the likes up? 277 people in here and only 16 likes.
Last 6 weeks. Are you proud of how your administration is conducting this immigration crackdown here in Minnesota right now?
Well, I'm proud of the fact that we're standing behind law enforcement, and I'm proud of the fact that we're enforcing the country's laws. But, you know, you asked a question about this 5-year-old kid. I actually saw this terrible story while I was coming to Minneapolis. We had just left Toledo, Ohio this morning for an economic messaging event. And I see this story, and I'm a father of a 5-year-old, actually, a 5-year-old little boy. And I think to myself, oh, my God, this is terrible. How did we arrest a 5-year-old? Well, I do a little bit more follow-up research. And what I find is that the 5-year-old was not arrested, that his dad was an illegal alien. And then when they went to arrest his illegal alien father, the father ran. So the story...
Yeah, Hannibal, I know you're a subscriber. You've been a long-time subscriber. I appreciate you subscribing to the channel, Hannibal. You've been a subscriber for a very long time. And I thank you and I appreciate you coming through and rocking with me.
The story is that ICE detained a 5-year-old. Well, what are they supposed to do? Are they supposed to let a 5-year-old child freeze to death? Are they not supposed to arrest an illegal alien in the United States of America? If the argument is that you can't arrest people who have violated our laws because they have children, then every single parent is going to be completely given immunity from ever being the subject of law enforcement. That doesn't make any sense. No one thinks that makes any sense. Now, you know, there are so many of these cases like that where if you just understand the context, there have been a number of situations that I've looked into personally where I say, wait a second, we don't want ICE arresting American citizens.
Hello, everybody that just now joined the stream. I appreciate y'all for coming through. Thank y'all, thank y'all, thank y'all. I don't want to keep stopping it, you know, so I thank everybody right now for coming into the stream, and I really, really appreciate you. Just do me a favor. Hit the like button and sub to the channel.
Supposed to be enforcing the immigration laws against illegal aliens. So then I look into it and I find out that the American citizen who was arrested took a swing at an ICE officer. You can't have that happen. And of course they have to defend themselves. And of course they have the right to detain somebody who assaults a law enforcement officer. Now, this is my point. Do we want these things to happen? Do we want these arrests to be so chaotic? No, we don't. These guys want it least of all, but if we had a little cooperation from local and from local and state officials, I think the chaos would go way down in this community.
President!
Go ahead.
After the Renee Good shooting, sir, the administration seemed to...
Yeah, well, you can go next.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
thought you pointed it
No,
out.
that's fine. I'll take both.
After the Renee Good shooting, sir, the administration seemed to... After the Renee Good shooting, the administration seemed to suggest that ICE officers enjoyed near complete immunity. But today you told the Washington Examiner that when appropriate, the administration might take disciplinary actions against ICE agents. So is that a change in opinion? And if so, why the change in tone?
No, I didn't say, and I don't think any other official within the Trump administration said that officers who engaged in wrongdoing would enjoy immunity. That's absurd. What I did say is that when federal law enforcement officers violate the law, that is typically something that federal officials would look into. We don't want these guys to have kangaroo courts. We want them to actually have real due process, real investigation, because again, sometimes they're accused of wrongdoing, and it turns out when you learn the context, they didn't actually do anything wrong. But of course we're going to investigate these things. Of course we're investigating the Renee Good shooting, but we're investigating them in a way that respects people's rights and that ensures that if somebody did something wrong, yes, they're going to face disciplinary action, but we're not going to judge them in the court of public opinion. I've spoken at length on this particular case. I think that Renee Good's death is a tragedy. I also think that she rammed an ICE officer with her car. So the tragedy here is multi-layered. The tragedy is there was a misunderstanding. The tragedy is that Renee Good lost her life. The tragedy is that you have ICE officers who are going into communities where they're worried that if they call 911, no one's going to come to help them. That is what produces this terrible situation, and it's something state and local officials here in Minnesota could solve.
Mr. Vice
Yes, sir.
President. message towards March for Life tomorrow, especially regarding the cooperation and family values? It's a shame that kids have to get caught up in all this, and towards that, sir.
Well, it is a shame that kids have to get caught up in this. I am speaking at March for Life tomorrow. I'm pro-life, and I'm very excited to speak there. I want to talk about local law enforcement, but, I am, as a child, I saw people in my family get arrested. It's terrible. It's heartbreaking, it's chaotic, it's traumatic for the kids. I can recognize that, and I can recognize that we got to support these kids, while on the other hand saying that just because you're a parent doesn't mean that you get complete immunity from law enforcement. And I think we have to hold both of those thoughts in our head at the same time. We've got to be sympathetic to the kids who are caught up in some of these enforcement actions. We've also got to say we have to enforce the law without bias, with fairness, but we've got to enforce the law.
Mr. Vice President!
There was a class in Power Club a few weeks ago, and their mayor said they haven't heard about ICE being in the city, and how does ICE proactively work with these local agencies? What are really possible, and what's your response to that?
You said there was an altercation in St. Cloud. Yeah.
After the incident, the mayor said that ICE did not communicate with them. They were in the city for a major operation, but police chief did not know about the operation at the time. Could you talk a little bit about proactive communication?
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of the takeaways. I've talked with these guys before we came on the stage, but during our roundtable and some of the other conversations we've had. Communication, we absolutely want to ensure there's good communication between federal officials and state and local officials, and I'm sure that we can do better on that. We absolutely want to make sure that we are communicating, but that also requires a two-way street, and that's the point that I make about state and local officials. These guys will absolutely communicate with state and local officials. They'll tell people if they have to do an enforcement operation in a particular municipality, but part of that is they also want to ensure that if they're communicating about their whereabouts, that's not being used as a weapon against them. Sometimes they tell people where they're going, and then they find out that their agents' faces are on on Reddit or on some social media thread saying, here's this guy, we know he's going to be at this place at this exact time. So that communication has got to be a two-way street. These guys are going to communicate with business leaders, with local officials, with state officials, but we also need the local officials and state officials to do a good job of protecting people when they're in their communities. We're not asking, by the way, we don't want any police officer in this community, in this state, to help us do immigration enforcement. We've got that. But if a protester shows up and that protester turns violent against our immigration officers, we really, really need the cooperation of our local partners. We haven't gotten it yet, but I think if we do, we really can lower the temperature. Yeah. Yeah, so I saw that story, and the story is like so much that I read in the mainstream media. It's missing a whole lot of context, and when you appreciate the context, it makes sense. No one is saying, look, there are exceptions. For example, a crazy exception, if somebody is fired at from inside a house, they don't need a warrant to go inside that person's house. There are very narrow exceptions to the warrant requirement where law enforcement officers don't need a warrant if, for example, they're an imminent threat of their lives. But what we've said and what ICE has proposed, what the Department of Homeland Security really has proposed in the Department of Justice, is that we can get administrative warrants to enforce administrative immigration law. Now, it's possible, I guess, that the courts will say no, and of course, if the courts say no, we would follow that law, but nobody is talking about doing immigration enforcement without a warrant. We're talking about different types of warrants that exist in our system. Typically what happens, not always, but typically in the immigration system, those are handled by administrative law judges. So we're talking about getting warrants from those administrative law judges. And then, of course, with other cases, you get judges or you get warrants from a judge. That's very consistent with the practice of American law. I'm sure the courts will weigh in on that, but we're never going to enter somebody's house without some kind of a warrant, unless, of course, somebody's firing on an officer or they have to do something in order to protect themselves. Go ahead.
Do you believe that you can forcibly enter with an administrative warrant, or would that be a violation?
Well, our understanding is that you can enforce the immigration laws of the country under an administrative order if you have an administrative warrant. That's what we think. That's our understanding of the law. That's our best faith attempt to understand the law. Again, this is something courts will weigh in on. I won't speak to that. But yes, most immigration law in our country is not done through the criminal system with the judge. It's done through the administrative law system. We're going to continue that practice just as they did in the Biden administration or any other administration.
Was there anything that you heard or saw today that would cause you to talk to the president to invoke the Insurrection Act? And then also, did you meet or talk to the ICE agent who was involved in the neighborhood incident?
I did not talk to him today. I talked to some of his colleagues. Your question on the Insurrection Act is interesting. I've tried to understand this as well as I possibly could, and my understanding is what the Insurrection Act, what invoking the Insurrection Act would allow the federal government to do is that it would allow the federal government to use the military for local law enforcement operations. Right now, we don't think that we need that. Now, the president could change his mind. Of course, things could get worse. But right now, we think that federal law enforcement officers can do the job of federal law enforcement. Now, what I do worry about, again, is if the chaos gets worse, if more and more ICE agents start getting assaulted, if other law enforcement officers start getting assaulted, that would be a real problem. But again, we have so much federal law enforcement resources here right now. We have so many people here that we do not want to have here. I do not want so many ICE officers in Minneapolis right now. I mean, good Lord, it's really, really freaking cold outside. But they're here not even to enforce immigration laws, but to protect the people from the rioters. That's an absurd state of affairs, and we wouldn't need it if we had a little bit more cooperation from the Minneapolis Police Department. Again, the Minneapolis Police Department, my understanding is that the actual beat cops on the ground, they would love to help out, but they're being told by somebody, I don't know if it's Mayor Frey, they're being told by somebody not to cooperate at all. What kind of a person tells their local police don't protect somebody if they're being assaulted by a rioter? It's crazy, and it's got to stop. Yes.
Earlier this week, local law enforcement accused federal agents of racial profiling. Why are there so many U.S. citizens being caught up in these operations?
Well, I think your question assumes something that's not necessarily in evidence, which is that when there are American citizens who have been caught up in some of these enforcement operations, very often it is people who have assaulted a law enforcement officer. They're not being arrested because they violated the immigration laws. They're being arrested because they punched a federal law enforcement officer. That is a totally reasonable thing. Now, to the accusation of racial profiling, look, it's something that we take very seriously. We will take accusations of racial profiling back to Washington. We'll certainly look into them as they come up. But this is not a group that's going around and looking for people who violated the law based on skin color. They're looking for people who violated the actual law, the law of our immigration system in this country. And so long as we had more cooperation, I think they could do these things in a much more targeted way. They would actually know where some of the bad guys are. I mean, again, you hear things that are hard to believe, but I've confirmed that they are true. Sex offenders who we're trying to get off the streets, who the local officials won't tell us their last known address. So then the local officials say, oh my God, these guys are doing widespread targeted enforcement operations, when in reality, we would love to just go to one house. The local officials won't tell us which one house to go to.
Mr. Vice President.
Mr. Vice President, to that question, the local police chiefs have said their own off-duty officers, so police officers, are being targeted because they are a person of color and asked to show their papers. Is that a concern of the administration of the Department of Homeland Security if local law enforcement says their own officers are being targeted and they describe it as, quote, civil rights violations in our streets?
So I saw one story about this and one local police officer who said this. And look, certainly is it a concern? Absolutely. The first thing we have to figure out is whether it happened or not. And then if it happened, whether there is a good explanation or a bad explanation. And of course, if somebody violated the law, if somebody racially profiled, if somebody violated the rights of one of our fellow citizens, that is something we will take very seriously. What I also would say is that many of the most viral stories of the past couple of weeks have turned out to be, at best, partially true. So we want to try people based on reality, based on the truth, based on context. We're not going to prejudge people just because of viral social media story that turned out to be half false.
Mr. Vice President.
President, a quick question. About the roundtable you just had, I presume that happened. Did you invite anybody with an opposing point of view to get an idea of why people are upset here? And just as a quick follow-up, have you reached out to Governor Walz at all in an attempt to turn down the tent?
So I haven't talked to Governor Walz on this particular trip. A number of members of our administration, I believe our chief of staff, spoke to the governor and has been in constant contact with his staff over the past week. We've been in my office in constant contact with people here on the ground in Minneapolis. There were certainly people at our roundtable with opposing views, and look, I don't even know, whether it's public, but yes, we met with people with opposing views here at the roundtable. I wanted to get a perspective from everybody, but also, of course, offer my opinion that with a little bit more cooperation, we could lower the chaos. We're going to keep on doing that. If Governor Walz wants to call me, we'll absolutely continue talking. I will say that my sense of this situation, having talked to these guys for a long time, is this is primarily a law enforcement issue. This is the Attorney General. This is the local mayor. This is all of the organs of local and state law enforcement. That's who we focus on, but we've certainly been in communication with the governor and his office as well.
Vice President.
Yeah.
So, local law enforcement obviously hasn't been really helping out with the agents who've been assaulted repeatedly. What's the plan if nothing changes there here locally and this operation has attracted thousands of agents? Are there any plans to go to any other cities from here?
Well, right now we're focused on Minneapolis because that's where we have the highest concentration of people who have violated our immigration laws, and that's also, frankly, where we see the most assault of our law enforcement officers. I mean, our plan is very simple. If you assault a federal law enforcement officer, we're going to do everything that we can to put you in prison. It's very simple. And most of these protesters, as much as I may disagree with their politics, most of them have been peaceful, but a lot of them have not been peaceful. And if you go and storm a church, if you go and insult a federal law enforcement officer, we're going to try government to put you in prison. Respect people's rights. Respect people's rights to worship. Respect people's rights to do their job without being assaulted. If you follow that basic principle, the Trump administration is going to do everything that we can to protect your rights. But if you go after somebody, if you assault somebody, if you make a 9-year-old girl cry because you walked into her church and harassed her, we're going to go after you with every single tool that we have.
Vice President.
Maggie Vesco with NBC News, sir. Your administration has said repeatedly this is about safety, about making Americans feel safer. So what do you say to people who are in Minnesota who say it's the overwhelming presence of ICE officers and federal officers and their tactics that are making them feel less safe?
Well, one thing I would say is, first of all, we saw in 2025 the biggest one-year drop in murders in the history of the United States of America. Significant reductions in violent crime. The reason why we have less violent crime is really two reasons. Number one, because we're enforcing the immigration laws and getting very violent criminals out of our country. And number two, because we're enforcing our criminal laws and putting guys who assault and murder behind bars. This is part of a broad effort to make us safe. And the chaos that people are seeing, and I understand there is frustration of the chaos, I'd say that we're doing everything that we can to lower the temperature, and we would like federal and state and local officials to meet us halfway. So much so.
Perceiving it correctly? Are you saying that they're not seeing that it's the tactics or the presence of the officers that are...
Look, I'm sure that people are seeing a lot of things that would make any member of our national community feel very upset, but I also think that if you understand this in context, this is the inevitable consequence of a state and local government that have decided that they're not going to cooperate with immigration enforcement at all. In fact, they're going to aggressively not cooperate. So here's a basic illustration of this. If you are an ICE officer and you have to arrest a person who's committed assault and is also an illegal alien, but the state and local officials won't help you identify that person, many of the things that people in Minneapolis are seeing that give them pause, that frustrate them, that worry them, that make them feel like things are too chaotic, many of these things are coming from the fact that there's no cooperation with state and local law enforcement. And I guess what I would tell people, again, many of whom are justifiably concerned and worried about what they're seeing in their communities, is why are we not seeing it anywhere else? We're seeing this level of chaos only in Minneapolis. LA and Chicago, we had some problems there. Pretty much every jurisdiction where these guys are operating, you don't see the same level of chaos. You don't see the same level of violence. You don't see the problems that we're seeing in Minneapolis. Maybe the problem is unique to Minneapolis, and we believe that it is. And it's a lack of cooperation between state and local law enforcement and federal law enforcement. Sir.
CNN. ICE has been operating here for years with less pushback than we're seeing right now. And even the St. Paul police chief recently said, is there not a way to find common ground without scaring the hell out of people in the community? Those were his words. And I just wonder, with this Operation Metro Surge, is any part of it meant to send a form of political message to the leaders here in Minneapolis and the state of Minnesota? And I know you talked about you've been in touch with the governor's offices and the mayor's offices, but why have you not been able to speak to them directly? Have they not been willing to do so?
Well, look, I have spoken to some of the people in Minnesota directly. I spoke to some of them today. I've spoke to others in the past. And again, our staff has been in very direct contact with pretty much every official with any influence or any power in Minneapolis. But no, we're not trying to send a political message. We're trying to enforce the law. And unfortunately, what has happened is that as we've enforced the law, there's been this weird reaction, again, unique to this city. This is not a common thing across the United States of America. There's been a very unique, very Minneapolis-specific reaction to our enforcement of federal immigration laws. What I'm trying to do here today is understand why that is. What is it about Minneapolis that has become so chaotic? What are the specific types of cooperation that we need? Look, I don't need Tim Walz or Jacob Frey or anybody else to come out and say that they agree with J.D. Vance or Donald Trump on immigration. I just don't need that. What I do need them to do is empower their local officials to help our federal officials out in a way where this can be a little bit less chaotic and it can be a little bit more targeted. Like if we're trying to find a sex offender, tell us where the guy lives. Simple things like that, simple changes in how they're approaching immigration enforcement would make this work a lot better. It would make Minneapolis' streets a lot safer, and it would make this whole thing a lot less traumatic for this community. I'll take one more question.
Mr. Vice President.
Go ahead.
You said that it's time to turn down the temperature. Does that include changes to both ICE and community tactics that we've seen employed on the streets, including less than lethal tactics, pepper spray, pepper balls? Beyond that, what is the federal government's role in turning down the temperature? And the Minnesota Department of Corrections says that its own officers have been cooperating with ICE all along, handing over criminals once they serve their sentences to ICE officials. And you can see that there is some cooperation with the state.
Yeah, look, if I was going to list the 5 agencies locally and statewide that I'm most worried about, I wouldn't put the Department of Corrections on that list. I think that while there are certain things we'd like to see more from them, they've hardly been the worst offenders. You agree with that, guys? That's a fair assessment. But I think you talked about tactics and you talked about the response to things. Look, we don't want to employ tactics that we don't employ the kind of tactics that are only necessary when violence is committed against officers. That is these guys' directive, and that's what we're going to try to do. And again, the president said this a couple of days ago. Whenever you have a law enforcement operation, even if 99.99% of the guys do everything perfectly, you're going to have people that make mistakes. That is the nature of law enforcement. What I do think that we can do is working with state and local officials, we can make the worst moments of chaos much less common. And all they've got to do is meet us halfway. These guys want to communicate with them. They want to talk to the local business leaders. Many of the people standing behind me are members of the Minneapolis community. Many of the officials that I met today who work in federal immigration enforcement, this is their home. They love this place. These are their neighbors. They want this to work a lot more smoothly. I think that we can get there. We just got to work at it a little bit, and we need some cooperation from state and local officials. The last thing that I'll say is I just hope they give it. This is a beautiful city. I've only been here a few times. I love it. Even in this weather, I love Minneapolis. We could do a lot better. We could do a lot more with more cooperation. The Trump administration, the directive that I got from the President of the United States is meet these guys halfway. Work with them so that we can make these immigration enforcement operations successful without endangering our ICE officers, and so that we can turn down the chaos a little bit, at least. I think a lot, actually. But for us to do that, we need some help from the state and local officials. We will keep on working with them, and so long as they're willing to work with us, they will always find a partner in public safety and law enforcement in the Trump administration. Thank you all.
Wow, Chad. Man, did y'all hear that, Chad? As I go over here, and we're going to let the mayor of Minneapolis do his rebuttal. Hold on, Chad. But while I switch over to this, I need everybody to do me a favor and subscribe to the channel. While we switching over to Mayor Frey, the mayor of Minneapolis, we're going to let's see. switch over to that. All right, now we ready to rock and roll. Appreciate y'all for joining me. I am your host, the one only Stock Sniper. Appreciate everybody for joining me. I appreciate everybody for coming through. Guys, did y'all catch what he was saying the whole time? Y'all probably did, because there's a lot of smart people in the chat. Well, all you have to do is pay attention. The ICE agents are not getting any help from the Minneapolis state and local law enforcement. I know y'all caught on to that's what he was saying the whole time. The ICE agents are getting no help from the local authorities. That's crazy work right there. Now we finna go over here and we finna hear what the mayor of Minneapolis has to say in rebuttal to JD Vance. So I appreciate y'all for joining me. Do me a favor and hit the like button as we keep the stream going. We got 211 people in the building. I thank each and every one of y'all for coming through. What's up, Hazen Reg? Appreciate you for coming through, bro. But yeah, chat, did y'all hear what JD Vance just said? He said that ICE agents that are there trying to get illegals out of Minneapolis are not getting any help from the local authorities. Now we're finna see what the mayor has to say in rebuttal to what JD Vance was telling us right now. Let's go, chat.
So it sounds like JD Vance is taking a whole lot of my talking points, but not all of them. He said, quote, come out and protest, but do it peacefully. That sounds exactly like what I've been saying since the very first moments following the shooting of Renee Good. Protest peacefully, but don't take the bait. Don't counter the chaos of Donald Trump with our own brand of chaos here. And so to the extent he's telling people to protest peacefully, we're in agreement. Second, and quote, we want to enforce the laws on one hand, while on the other making sure people in Minneapolis are able to go about their day. It sounds a lot to me like he wants to be mayor of the city, only he's only been here for 2 hours, whereas we in this city have been working through these issues and this chaos for the last several weeks. Peace is not spraying irritants and chemicals at peaceful protesters. It's not detaining a 5-year-old. It's not dragging a pregnant woman through the streets. You achieve peace by working directly with communities. You lower crime by strategically going after people that have committed it. The vice president said he would love to be able to send some of these agents home. You know, there's no disagreement there. We've been encouraging that for weeks. You heard me say it 2 weeks ago, and I've been saying it every single day since. If you're looking for an antidote to many of the issues that we have faced over the last several weeks, there's a very easy answer. And it's for this huge influx of federal agents, ICE and Border Control, to go home. And finally, he said if we had a little cooperation, we'd be able to keep streets safe. Once again, we agree. We have extensively worked with federal agencies under both Democratic and Republican administrations. We've worked with the DEA and the FBI. We've worked with the ATF and the U.S. Attorney's Office to successfully drive down crime in Minneapolis, and we've done so by strategically focusing on people that have actually committed serious and violent crimes. So what's changed? What's changed is the response that we're seeing. What's changed is that we have 3,000 plus ICE agents and Border Control that are on our streets without a clear plan. What's changed is we've got this huge influx of what feels like an occupation in a city in the upper Midwest. And what's changed is that they are arresting United States citizens. They are detaining people that have done nothing wrong. They're going after people exclusively based on the fact that they look like they're Somali or they look like they are Latino, and no reason beyond that. They've stopped law enforcement officers that are off duty. They've stopped fathers that are on their way just to drop off their kids. There are incredible people in our city that have come from a variety of different places around the country and around the globe, and they've made our city a better place. They're part of our family. We love them. We're proud to have them here. So I get that they've got a messaging challenge here, and it's predominantly because anybody can see with their own two eyes what's going on. You can't say with a straight face that pulling citizens off the street or going into a school is a targeted action when clearly it's not. Clearly, what we are seeing on our streets right now is discriminating only on the basis of race and largely indiscriminate thereafter. So yeah, in Minneapolis, we want to solve crime. We want to arrest murderers. Let's do it. Let's work together to drive down crime. Again, this is not that. We have had relationships with a number of federal administrations to successfully drive down crime. What we are seeing is this is more about political retaliation. This is more about tragically terrorizing people than it is about safety, than it is even about immigration. So, the job of law enforcement is to keep the peace, to keep Americans safe, and that is literally what I signed up to do and what the federal government signed up to do as well, and I urge that they do exactly that. And with that, I'll answer any questions you might have.
Earlier today, Vice President Vance, had said that you're not being cooperative. You had implied that there had been some order to prevent local police from responding to federal agents. Can you comment on that? Has any local official told police not to support agents?
What Vice President J.D. Vance is saying is he's rhetorically asking what makes Minneapolis different. What makes Minneapolis different is that we have an influx of 3,000 federal agents on our street, and we're not the size of New York City or Los Angeles. What makes us different is we're seeing constitutional violations play out in real time. What makes us different is, yes, we do have residents that are beautifully standing up, supporting their neighbors, providing food, escorting them to their jobs, recording some of the unconstitutional acts that are taking place to make sure that some sunlight is added as a disinfectant to some of the chaos that is being caused. And to your question, we have a separation ordinance, which is widely publicized, is nothing new. We had one well before this operation started taking place, and that separation ordinance says that our police officers and public officials do not work with any federal agency around immigration enforcement work specifically. We do work with federal agencies to catch murderers. And so if they want to catch murderers, that's what we're for. And it doesn't matter if they're from Minneapolis, Chicago, Venezuela, Germany. It doesn't matter where the murderer is from. We're getting them because they're a murderer, not based on where they grew up. That's the way this should have worked in America. What our separation ordinance also says, and I say this to everybody throughout the city, is that we will not ask the question in Minneapolis as to whether a person is documented or not. Why? Because when you call 911, we want everybody to know that our first and primary concern is not your papers, but it's your safety. That's what we are focused on. Now, our police officers respond to any instance where they can help keep people safe. We have responded. We have arrested people. You've seen it. You can report it. Where safety has been compromised, our officers have stepped in to help. But I'll tell you exactly what I want our officers doing. We have 600 of them. They got limited time. I want them focusing their energies on investigating crime, on keeping people safe, on preventing carjackings and homicides. I don't want them spending time hunting down a guy, a dad, who has done nothing wrong, who just dropped his kids off at daycare, who's about to go work a 12-hour shift. That guy makes our city a better place.
Mayor, your reaction to J.D. Vance saying that the military is not needed here in the state?
Yeah, totally. So my reaction to J.D. Vance saying that the military is not needed in our state. Yeah, wildly agree.
Mayor Fry, what would improved communication with federal authorities look like to you?
Well, so the question is, what would improved communication with federal authorities look like to me? Give me a call. You know, if J.D. Vance could feel free to reach out. We didn't get an invite, maybe unsurprisingly, to hang out while he was in town. We have done a whole lot of work through a number of different channels, including the channel of an email to seek an audience to try to figure out how we can stop this from happening and how we can keep our city safe. Again, I want to be really clear here. There is a route forward if we're all willing to see it. If their goal is to keep Minneapolis safe from criminals that are doing bad things, we agree, regardless of where those criminals are from. We want to make sure that they are held accountable and that we're able to keep our city safe. And so there's broad agreement around that. For all these other people, though, that have done nothing wrong, that are these wonderful members of our community, why not a path to citizenship for them? That makes all the sense in the world to me.
Mayor, what do you make of the Vice President meeting with Republican state lawmakers and neither you or the governor?
So the question was, what do I make of the Vice President Vance meeting with Republican lawmakers, but not me nor the governor? I mean, the question that I have is, again, is this political performance that is taking place in our city that is compromising our safety, or is this trying to achieve an end goal that is improving safety in Minneapolis? Is this political performance? Is this partisan politics? Is this loving your ideology more than you love your country? Or is this trying to get something done for the sake of the American people and for the sake of the people of Minneapolis? I appreciate, the Vice President said a couple nice things about the beautiful city that we have. I agree, we have one. It's incredible. I'm so inspired by the people here in our city. And look, we got to find every possible way right now, again, as he said, to end this large-scale deployment and send these agents home.
One more question.
Is there any room for compromise between the city and ICE?
The question was, is there room for compromise? Look, I'll work with anybody that is willing to work in good faith with me.
Do you want to comment on the Levy Armstrong's arrest?
Yeah, so do I want to comment on Nikema Levy Armstrong's arrest? It's a gross abuse of power, and she should immediately be released.
Mayor Fry, really quickly.
I'll do one more, and then I'm going to get going.
Vice President Vance said if there's cooperation between state and local officials, these many ICE agents would not be needed to carry out enforcement operations. What's your response to that? Is that something you're open to, that open line of communication to get these thousands of ICE agents out of the city?
Well, you don't need to, so the question is, the room for cooperation between the federal government and the state or in the city. You don't need to take my word for it. You can see it in the numbers coming straight out of corrections, which is a state agency, in the way that they have worked together. You don't need to take my word for it. You can see it in the numbers where we've successfully driven down shootings on the north side to a record low by working with federal agents in the U.S. Attorney's Office and our police officers that are, by the way, working tirelessly to arrest perpetrators of violent crime. So, look, we have done that. But again, I need to be really clear. That is not this. If this were about getting murderers, we would be able to do that. The number one question that we ask when we're trying to get a murderer is, are you a murderer? Is this a murderer? Not, where are you from? Where are you from is not the point here. The point is there a crime, a violent crime that has been committed? And of course, we've partnered extensively on that front. And so, again, let's just be really clear. Let's be really straightforward. I deeply appreciate all the work that the press has done just to uncover the facts and the truth so that we're not like talking by one another. I'm grateful to all of you, and thank you so much.
Thank you, chat. Thank y'all, chat. I was muted the whole time. Golly. Okay, basically what I was saying was that I was having a conversation with somebody, and the conversation came up about kids wanting to have surgery, like a girl wanting to have surgery to be a boy, and the boy wanting to have surgery to be a girl. And I'm totally against that. And I brought up to them that guy up there, Joe Biden, fully supported that. And they straight up disagreed. They didn't think that Joe Biden said that before. So I went back in the archives. And that's why I got Joe Biden up here right now, guys, to prove a point that when you are involved, and sometimes you got to just listen. Sometimes you got to learn, you know, and sometimes when somebody tell you something, you can't take it serious. You know, you got to go look at it for yourself. So this is what I'm about to do right now. I'm about to show right now Joe Biden saying that a 10 or 11 or 12-year-old kid can actually make their own decisions as far as their sexuality. That's what I'm about to show right now. And then we're going to end the stream. Appreciate everybody for coming through and rocking with me. Basically, that's what I was saying while I was muted. So here we go. Here's Joe Biden. I'm going to let him talk for himself.
The idea that an 8-year-old child or a 10-year-old child decides, I decided I want to be transgender. That's what I think I'd like to be. It'll make my life a lot easier. There should be zero discrimination. And what's happening is too many transgender women of color are being murdered. They're being murdered. I mean, I think it's up to now 17. Don't hold me to that number, but it's higher now.
Yeah.
And that's just this year. And so I promise you, there is no reason to suggest that there should be any right denied your daughter or daughters, whichever, one or two, your daughter, that your other daughter has a right to be and do. None. Zero.
There you go.
Mr. President, are you...
There you go. That's what I was talking about. On Front Street, right there. And me personally, that's something I'm 10,000% against. There's no way that a child, 10, 11, 12 years old, can actually make that type of decision. That's just something, me personally, I can't get down with, So the person that we was talking about that, there you go. I just showed it to you. Now, if you down with it, that's on you. You got the freedom, because America is a free country. You got the freedom. That's what's so great about America, guys. That's what's so great about America. You got a freedom of speech. That's what's so great. You got the freedom to have free thought on things you agree with and you don't agree with. And that's just what it is. And that's what I love about America. That's why voting is so important, right? Because a lot of people think voting is for suckers. But voting is very, very important because, for instances, for things like that, some people agree with that, some people don't. That's why it's very important to vote, because everybody have a voice. Everybody has a voice, That's why this is called the Freedom of Speech channel. You can come over here and speak your mind, speak your thoughts, You can do that. So I think we're going to keep the stream going for a few more minutes. Then after that, we're going to be out of here. I appreciate everybody for coming and rocking with me. Appreciate everybody for joining me. I appreciate everybody that's been subscribing to the channel tonight. I really, really appreciate y'all. Everybody that's been hitting the like button, I really, really appreciate y'all. So with that being said, we're going to keep it going. Here go your president, Donald Trump.
That depends on the way you want to figure it, but we'll go with the way the fake news likes it better because it sounds, can you imagine a 90% reduction sounds much worse. But drug prices are going to be coming down tremendously in all the nations, and I appreciate them doing it, but they did it, in all fairness, without tariffs. I wouldn't have been able to get it done. After declining $3,000 under Biden, real incomes are up in the United States by $2,000, $3,000, and even $5,000 and more. Home ownership has always been a symbol of health and vigor of American society, but that goal fell out of reach for millions and millions of people in the Biden era because interest rates went up so high. Today, I'm taking action to bring back this bedrock of the American dream. In recent years, Wall Street giants and institutional investment firms, many of you are here, many of you are good friends of mine, many of you are supporters. Sorry to do this to you, I'm so sorry. But you've driven up housing prices by purchasing hundreds of thousands of single-family homes, and it's been a great investment for them. Often as much as 10% of houses on the market. You know, the crazy thing is a person can't get depreciation on a house, but when a corporation buys it, they get depreciation. Okay, that's something we're going to have to think about, too. I don't know if too many people think about that. You buy a corporation, they buy 500 houses. They buy hundreds of thousands. They buy 500 houses. They can take depreciation. A person sweats and works and buys one house, they can't. But homes are built for people, not for corporations, and America will not become a nation of renters. We're not going to do that. That's why I have signed an executive order banning large institutional investors from buying single-family homes. It's just not fair to the public. They're not able to buy a house. And I'm calling on Congress to pass that ban into permanent law, and I think they will. One of the biggest barriers to saving for a down payment has been surging credit card debt. The profit margin for credit card companies now exceeds 50%, one of the biggest. And they charge Americans interest rates of 28%, 30%, 31%, 32%. Whatever happened to usury? So to help our citizens recover from the Biden disaster, all caused by this horrible precedent, I'm asking Congress to cap credit card interest rates at 10% for 1 year. And this will help millions of Americans save for a home. They have no idea they're paying 28%. They go out there a little late in their payment and they end up losing their house. It's terrible. To unleash innovation in savings and financing, I'm also working to ensure America remains the crypto capital of the world. And to that end, last year, I signed the landmark Genius Act into law. Now Congress is working very hard on crypto market structure legislation, Bitcoin, all of them, which I hope to sign very soon, unlocking new pathways for Americans to reach financial freedom. And I did it for two reasons. Number one, I thought it was politically good, and it was. I got tremendous political support. But more importantly, China wanted that market too. It's just like they want the AI. And we've got that market, I think, pretty well locked up. If I didn't do it, Biden was totally against it until before the election when they realized that, there were millions of people voting against him over crypto. And all of a sudden, they loved it very much, but it was too late. They blew it. But it is politically popular, but it's much more importantly, we have to make it so that China doesn't get the hold of it. And once they have that hold, we're not going to be able to get it back. So I'm honored to have done it. Finally, I've instructed government-backed institutions to purchase up to $200 billion in mortgage bonds to bring down interest rates. And I'll be announcing a new Fed chairman in the not-too-distant future. I think he'll do a very good job. So he gave away some of it. He did give that away. So we have something, got something, but somebody that's very respected. They're all respected. They're all great. Everyone that I interviewed is great. Everyone could do, I think, a fantastic job. Problem is they change once they get the job. They do. They're saying everything I want to hear, and then they get the job. They're locked in for 6 years. They get the job, and all of a sudden, let's raise rates a little bit. I call them, sir, we'd rather not talk about this. It's amazing how people change once they have the job, but it's too bad. sort of disloyalty, but they got to do what they think is right. We have a terrible chairman right now, Jerome, too late Powell. He's always too late. And he's very late with interest rates, except before the election, he was just fine for the other side. So we're going to have somebody that's great, and we hope he does the right job. Last week, the average 30-year mortgage rate dropped below 6% for the first time in many years. Another major factor in driving up housing costs was the mass invasion of our borders. And I have to say one thing about housing, because nobody ever says this. I am very protective of people that already own a house, of which we have millions and millions and millions. And because we have had such a good run, the house values have gone up tremendously. And these people have become wealthy. They weren't wealthy. They become wealthy because of their house. And every time you make it more and more and more affordable for somebody to buy a house cheaply, you're actually hurting the value of those houses, obviously, because the one thing works in tandem with the other. And I don't want to do anything that's going to hurt the value of people that own a house, who for the first time in their lives are walking around the streets of whatever city they're in, very proud that their house is worth $500,000, $600,000, $700,000. Now, if I want to really crush the housing market, I could do that so fast and people could buy houses, but you would destroy a lot of people that already have houses. In some cases, they've mortgaged their house, wow, and the mortgage would be very low, and all of a sudden the mortgage without any changes becomes very high, and they end up losing the house. I'm not going to hurt, and I speak with Scott, who's doing a fantastic job, and Howard, who's doing a fantastic job, and all of my people. And I always say, look, you know, I can crush the hell out of the market. We can drop interest rates to a level, and that's one thing we do want to do. That's natural. That's good for everybody. You know, the dropping of the interest rates, we should be paying a much lower interest rate than we are. We should be paying the lowest interest rate of any country in the world, because without the United States, you don't have a country. I mean, I had a case with Switzerland. We happened to be in Switzerland. Maybe I'll give you a quick story. But they were paying nothing. They make beautiful watches, great watches, Rolex, all of them. They were paying nothing to the United States when they sent their product in. And we had a $41 billion deficit. $41 billion with this beautiful place. Flew over it, isn't it nice? So I said, let's put a 30% tariff on them so that we get back some of it, not all of it at all. We'd still have a deficit, big deficit. We had 41 million. That's a big deficit. And I said, let's put a tariff on. Different tariffs, different places. You're all party to them. In some cases, victims to them. But in the end, it's a fair thing. And most of you realize that. But we put a 30% tariff on Switzerland, and all hell broke loose. They were calling, I mean, like you wouldn't believe. And I know so many people from Switzerland, incredible place, incredible, brilliant place. But I didn't realize that they're only good because of us. And there's so many other examples. I mean, us, probably other places, but a majority of the money they make is because of us, because we never charged them anything. So they come in, they sell their watches, no tariffs, no nothing. They walk away, they make $41 billion on just us. So I said, no, we can't do that. So I'm going to bring it up. I still would have a deficit pretty substantial, but I brought it up to 30%. And I guess Prime Minister, I don't think President, I think Prime Minister called a woman, and she was very repetitive. She said, no, 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 you cannot do that, 30%. You cannot do that. We are a small, small country. I said, yeah, but you have a big, big deficit. You may be small, but you have a bigger deficit than big countries. He said, no, 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 please, you cannot do it. Kept saying the same thing over and over. We are a small country. I said, but you're a big country in terms of, and she just rubbed me the wrong way, I'll be honest with you. And I said, all right, thank you, ma'am, appreciate it. Do not do this. Thank you very much, ma'am. And I made it 39%. And then all hell really broke out. And I was paid visits by everybody. Rolex came to see me. They all came to see me. But I realized, and I reduced it, because I don't want to hurt people. I don't want to hurt them. And we brought it down to a, lower level. Doesn't mean it's not going up, but we brought it down to a lower level. But they pay now, tariff. But I realized that we have many places like that where they're making a fortune because of the United States. Without the United States, they wouldn't be making anything. Think of it. Switzerland made $41 billion on us. And as she said, it's a small place. And I realized with that, I don't know, it was so, because she was so aggressive. And I realized in that conversation that the United States is keeping the whole world afloat. Many places, I could give you 6, 7 places just in the people in this little area. I know every one of them. They're looking down. They don't want to see me, and they don't want to stare me in the eyes. But they're taking advantage of, everybody took advantage of the United States. But I've been very fair, and I gave them a tariff, and it was fine. But I realized that without us, it's not Switzerland anymore. Without us, it's not any of the countries that are represented here. And we want to work with the countries. We want to work with them. We're not looking to destroy them. I could have said 39, 40%. I could have said I want a 70% tariff, then we make money with Switzerland. But Switzerland would have been probably destroyed, financially destroyed. I don't want to do that. But we should be paying the lowest interest rate of everybody. I hope Scott's listening to this, because we should be paying the lowest interest rate of everybody. Without us, most of the countries don't even work. And then you have the protection factor. Without our military, which is the greatest in the world by far, without our military, you have threats that you wouldn't believe. You wouldn't believe. You don't have threats because of us, and that's because of NATO. One other thing, and I have to say it so importantly, in the old days, and I used to say I'm the youngest in the room. Now I'm among the older. I hate to say it. I don't feel old, but I'm among the older. But I remember $41 billion deficit. $41 billion with this beautiful place. Flew over it, isn't it nice? So I said, let's put a 30% tariff on them so that we get back some of it, not all of it at all. We'd still have a deficit, big deficit. We had 41 million. That's a big deficit. And I said, let's put a tariff on. Different tariffs, different places. You're all party to them. In some cases, victims to them. But in the end, it's a fair thing. And most of you realize that. But we put a 30% tariff on Switzerland, and all hell broke loose. They were calling, I mean, like you wouldn't believe. And I know so many people from Switzerland, incredible place, incredible, brilliant place. But I then realized that they're only good because of us. And there's so many other examples. I mean, us, probably other places, but a majority of the money they make is because of us, because we never charged them anything. So they come in, they sell their watches, no tariffs, no nothing. They walk away, they make $41 billion on just us. So I said, no, we can't do that. So I'm going to bring it up. I still would have a deficit pretty substantial, but I brought it up to 30%. And I guess Prime Minister, I don't think President, I think Prime Minister called a woman, and she was very repetitive. She said, no, 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 you cannot do that, 30%. You cannot do that. We are a small, small country. I said, yeah, but you have a big, big deficit. You may be small, but you have a bigger deficit than big countries. He said, no, 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 please, you cannot do it. Kept saying the same thing over and over. We are a small country. I said, but you're a big country in terms of, and she just rubbed me the wrong way, I'll be honest with you. And I said, all right, thank you, ma'am, appreciate it. Do not do this. Thank you very much, ma'am. And I made it 39%. And then all hell really broke out. And I was paid visits by everybody. Rolex came to see me. They all came to see me. But I realized, and I reduced it, because I don't want to hurt people. I don't want to hurt them. And we brought it down to a, lower level. Doesn't mean it's not going up, but we brought it down to a lower level. But they pay now, tariff. But I realized that we have many places like that where they're making a fortune because of the United States. Without the United States, they wouldn't be making anything. Think of it. Switzerland made $41 billion on us. And as she said, it's a small place. And I realized with that, I don't know, it was so, because she was so aggressive. And I realized in that conversation that the United States is keeping the whole world afloat. Many places, I could give you 6, 7 places just in the people in this little area. I know every one of them. They're sort of, I don't want to hurt people. I don't want to hurt them. And we brought it down to a, lower level. Doesn't mean it's not going up, but we brought it down to a lower level. But they pay now, tariff. But I realized that we have many places like that where they're making a fortune because of the United States. Without the United States, they wouldn't be making anything. Think of it. Switzerland made $41 billion on us. And as she said, it's a small place. And I realized with that, I don't know, it was so, because she was so aggressive. And I realized in that conversation that the United States is keeping the whole world afloat. Many places, I could give you 6, 7 places just in the people in this little area. I know every one of them. They're sort of, they're looking down. They don't want to see me. They don't want to stare me in the eyes. But they're taking advantage of, everybody took advantage of the United States. But I've been very fair, and I gave them a tariff, and it was fine. But I realized that without us, it's not Switzerland anymore. Without us, it's not any of the countries that are represented here. And we want to work with the countries. We want to work with them. We're not looking to destroy them. I could have said 39, 40%. I could have said I want a 70% tariff, then we make money with Switzerland. But Switzerland would have been probably destroyed, financially destroyed. I don't want to do that. But we should be paying the lowest interest rate of everybody. I hope Scott's listening to this, because we should be paying the lowest interest rate of everybody. Without us, most of the countries don't even work. And then you have the protection factor. Without our military, which is the greatest in the world by far, without our military, you have threats that you wouldn't believe. You wouldn't believe. You don't have threats because of us, and that's because of NATO. One other thing, and I have to say it so importantly, in the old days, and I used to say I'm the youngest in the room. Now I'm among the older. I hate to say it. I don't feel old, but I'm among the older. But I remember not long ago, 20, 25 years ago, when good news came out about, let's say, the United States. The United States had a great quarter. The United States had a great month. All the stocks went up. And that's the way it's supposed to be. Now when they say, the United States had a record quarter, it's unbelievable how well it's doing, all the stocks crash because they say, oh no, inflation, they're going to raise interest rates. And they do. Some of these stupid people like Powell, they raise interest rates. And what they do is they stop you from being successful. It used to be when we had a great quarter, a great month, great earnings, great anything, any good news, the stock market went up. That's the way it's going to be. We got to do that again, because that's the way it should be. Now when we have a great month, they want to kill it. Like we did over 5%. People were surprised. We should do 20%. We could do 25%. When we announce good numbers, and the reason is they're so petrified of inflation. And growth doesn't mean inflation. We've had tremendous growth with very low inflation. In fact, growth can fight inflation, proper growth. So we want to get back to the days when we announce great numbers, because we're going to be announcing phenomenal. You know, all these factories that are being built at record, thousands of businesses are being built right now. Remember, $18 trillion is invested. I think the second number is 3, and that was China many years ago. Investments in the country from outside. 18 trillion, nobody's ever seen. And that's money coming in and building things, factories. Thousands of businesses are being built, thousands. Hundreds of big factories, car plants are moving back to the United States. They're coming in from Canada, they're coming in from Mexico, from Japan. Japan's coming in and building plants here in order to avoid tariffs. They're coming in. We got to do that again, because we should be paying the lowest interest rate of everybody. Without us, most of the countries don't even work. And then you have the protection factor. Without our military, which is the greatest in the world by far, without our military, not long ago, 20, 25 years ago, when good news came out about, let's say, the United States had a great quarter, the United States had a great month, all the stocks went up. Not long ago, 20, 25 years ago, when good news came out about, let's say, the United States had a great quarter, the United States had a great month, all the stocks went up. And that's the way it's supposed to be. Now when they say the United States had a record quarter, it's unbelievable how well it's doing, all the stocks crash, because they say, oh no, inflation, they're going to raise interest rates. And they do. Some of these stupid people like Powell, they raise interest rates. And what they do is they stop you from being successful. It used to be when we had a great quarter, a great month, great earnings, great anything, any good news, the stock market went up. That's the way it's going to be. We got to do that again, because that's the way it should be. Now when we have a great month, they want to kill it. Like we did over 5%. People were surprised. We should do 20%. We could do 25%. When we announce good numbers, and the reason is they're so petrified of inflation. And growth doesn't mean inflation. We've had tremendous growth with very low inflation. In fact, growth can fight inflation, proper growth. So we want to get back to the days when we announce great numbers, because we're going to be announcing phenomenal. You know, all these factories that are being built at record, thousands of businesses are being built right now. Remember, $18 trillion is invested. I think the second number is 3, and that was China many years ago. Investments in the country from outside. 18 trillion, nobody's ever seen. And that's money coming in and building things, factories. Thousands of businesses are being built, thousands. Hundreds of big factories, car plants are moving back to the United States. They're coming in from Canada, they're coming in from Mexico, from Japan. Japan's coming in and building plants here in order to avoid tariffs. They're coming in from China, they're coming in from all over the world. We have more plants being built now, car plants, than we've ever had built, even in the heyday from the 1940s and 50s. And they're bigger. They don't use renovations anymore, where they take an old plant, they rip it down, they build a brand new plant, super modern plant. But it's happening at levels that nobody's ever seen. In 2024, the U.S. built less than 2 million new homes, but Biden admitted more than 8 million new migrants. And those days are over. In 2025, for the first time in 50 years, the United States had reverse migration. Boy, that was nice. And these were criminals that were being taken out of our country because they allowed people to come into our country from jails, from gangs, drug dealers, murderers. 11,888 murderers. We've gotten most of them out. And then ICE gets beat up by stupid people from leadership in Minnesota. We actually are helping Minnesota so much, but they don't appreciate it. Most places do. You know, Washington, D.C. is the safest place now in the United States. It was a very dangerous place to walk, and now you can walk with your wife, your kids, right through the middle of the city. Right now, Washington, D.C. is as safe as it gets. It was one of the most unsafe, I had to admit. We sent in the military, the National Guard. Within 2 months, it was great. Within 3 months, it's like a really great place and a safe place and a beautiful place. It's even been cleaned up. The graffiti's gone. The fences are gone. We don't have to worry about fences anymore. All of the places, the grasses are cut and replaced with new grass in many cases. It's all going to happen in the spring. But Washington and D.C. is beautiful again, and it's safe. New restaurants are opening up. They were all closing. Now you can't get into a restaurant. Restaurants in Washington, D.C. are all opening. Memphis also, Memphis, Tennessee, New Orleans, Louisiana. We're there for 3 weeks. We've cut the crime down by 64%. Within another month, we'll have virtually no crime there. We can do that all over. We're going to help the people in California. We want to have no crime. I know Gavin was here. I used to get along so great with Gavin when I was president. Gavin's a good guy. And we're going to, if he needed it, I would do it in a heartbeat. I'd love to see. We did help them a lot in Los Angeles, a lot with the early in my term when they had some problems. But we would love to do it. I will say this, if I were a Democrat governor or whatever, I would call up Trump. I'd say, come on in, make us look good. Because we're cutting crime down to nothing. And we're taking people out, career criminals, who are only going to do bad things, and we're bringing them back to their countries. But where we've done it has been amazing. And we have a capacity to do it at much greater levels. We're cutting illegal aliens off welfare and other government benefits, and I have directed that starting immediately, there will be no more payments to sanctuary cities because they are really just sanctuaries for criminals. They're really protecting criminals, and those are the ones we have to get out of the country. Murderers, drug dealers, the mentally insane. They emptied their mental institutions into the United States. And despite that, we have the lowest crime numbers that we've ever had in the history of the country. Just came out. But equally importantly, we're cracking down on more than $19 billion in fraud that was stolen by Somalian bandits. Can you believe that Somalian? They turned out to be higher IQ than we thought. I always say these are low IQ people. How did they go into Minnesota and steal all that money? And we have, you know, they're pirates. They're good pirates, right? But we shoot them out of the water just like we shoot the drug boats out. They're not pirating too many boats lately, do you notice? When they go out into those boats, they want to take over a $1.5 billion tanker loaded up with oil, and they say, we're going to blow up your boat. They have powerful weapons. You hit the side of the boat, you blow the whole thing up. The insurance companies are petrified, so they say, just give them the boat. We'll give them money instead. And I don't do that. We blow them right the hell out of the water. We see them going out, we blow them out of the water. We don't have any pirates so much anymore. If we do, they won't be there long. We've cut down with the hitting of the boats that are loaded up with drugs, including submarines. Can you believe they actually buy small, they call mini subs, very fast. They're meant for drugs. We've knocked out 2 of them. The Democrats say they were fishing. You have ruined somebody's fishing weekend. I would say a submarine is not a fishing boat. You don't fish. But we've knocked down drugs by water, the oceans, the sea, by 97.2%. Think of that. And I actually say, who the hell are the 3%? Because I would not want to be piloting one of those boats. We knocked them down, and now we're going to start on land. We're going to knock it all out. The land is the easy part. What we did on sea is incredible, and that's our great military. The situation in Minnesota reminds us that the West cannot mass import foreign cultures which have failed to ever build a successful society of their own. I mean, we're taking people from Somalia, and Somalia is a failed, it's not a nation. Got no government, got no police, got no military, got no nothing. And then we have this fake congressperson who they just reported is worth $30 million. You believe this? Ilhan Omar, talking about the Constitution that provides me. She comes from a country that's not a country. And she's telling us how to run America. Not going to get away with it much longer, let me tell you. The explosion of prosperity and conclusion and progress that built the West did not come from our tax codes. It ultimately came from our very special culture. This is the precious inheritance that America and Europe have in common. We share it. We share it, but we have to keep it strong. We have to become stronger, more successful, and more prosperous than ever. We have to defend that culture and rediscover the spirit that lifted the West from the depths of the Dark Ages to the pinnacle of human achievement. We live in an incredible, changing period. It's an unbelievable time, but we have to take advantage of the time that we're in. In our hands are technologies that our ancestors could scarcely have. I mean, they couldn't have even dreamt some of the things that we see today. And so rapidly they're produced. I mean, AI, 2 years ago, nobody ever heard of the term, and now everybody's talking about it. And it can have some very good purpose. It could also have some dangerous purpose, and for that we have to watch out. But some tremendous things are happening because of it. And we're leading by so much. We're doing so well. But opportunities that are bigger and grander than ever before in human history are right before us. It is the pioneers in this room. Many of you in this room are true pioneers. You're two truly brilliant people. Just your ability to get a ticket is brilliant because you have about 50 people for every seat. I don't know what, that's Larry. Everything Larry touches turns to gold. He made this very successful. But you're in this room, and some of you are the greatest leaders anywhere in the world. You're the greatest brains anywhere in the world. And the future is unlimited, and to a large part because of you, and we have to protect you, and we have to cherish you. I always say we have to cherish our brilliant people because there aren't many of them. So together with confidence, boldness, and persistence, let us lift up our people, grow our economies, defend our shared destiny, and build a future for our citizens that is more ambitious, more exciting, more inspiring, and greater than the world has ever seen. We're in a position to do things that nobody else has ever even thought of before. And many of the people in this room are the ones that are doing it, and I want to congratulate you, and I'm with you all the way. You can do things that nobody else can even think about. So I congratulate you on your tremendous success. And the United States is back, bigger, stronger, better than ever before. And I'll see you around. Thank you all very much. Thank you very much.
All right, chat, that's it. I appreciate y'all for joining. We did hear a lot of stuff from your president. And I appreciate y'all for rocking with me, chat. If you're just not joining, there's a lot of new people in here. Please consider subscribing to the channel. I need 12 more subscribers to make it to 89. You know, and I know 12 of y'all in here. It's 200 people in the building. All I need is 12 of y'all to hit that subscribe button and put on the notification bell. If you enjoyed the stream, if you enjoyed everything that I presented tonight, please do me a favor and subscribe to the channel. We're going to take up with part 3 because this is part 2. Last night was part 1. Today is part 2. And tomorrow is part 3. We went over a lot of things tonight. We presented a lot of things. We presented J.D. Vance. And what's going on with J.D. Vance is they're saying that they're not getting any help from the local authorities or the state authorities out there in Minnesota and Minneapolis, that the ICE agents are basically on their own. They're not getting any help from the local authorities. That's what's going on, chat. So with that being said, I thank everybody for joining me. Do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe button. So, and also hit the notification bell so you'll know whenever we go live. You know, this is the Freedom of Speech channel. You can come over here and you won't have to worry about the host kicking you out for speaking your opinion. You won't have to worry about the host blocking you for speaking your opinion. You won't have to worry about the host disrespecting you because you don't agree with the host. You know, you are welcome over here and you will be treated with the utmost respect. Because over here on Stock Sniper TV, we love and we appreciate y'all. No matter where you at in the world or America, because guess what? It's we the people. And that's what it is. You have that's one of our rights as Americans, to have the freedom of speech. That's a right, you know. And so many times you have people getting their feelings because other people don't agree with them. But in 2026, we are eliminating that. And there's a lot of smart people that come through this chat. A whole lot of smart people that enlighten us about a whole lot of different things. Of course, a lot of people disagree with everybody. That's the powerful thing about the American democracy. We have proper dialogue. You know, it's all right to disagree, as long as you ain't disrespecting nobody. So with that being said, chat, I'm going to call it a night. Tomorrow is part 3. Tomorrow is part 3. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and put on the notification bells so you will be notified when we are live. I love and I appreciate y'all. Everybody that come through and rock with the channel, I love and I appreciate y'all. Everybody that's been subscribing and liking and commenting, I love and appreciate y'all, because your opinion matters, you know, and I learn a lot from reading the comments. I learn a lot, chat. I go back and I rewatch the live, and I go through and I read every comment, because while I'm doing my show and while I'm doing the stream, it's very, very difficult to read every single chat. Every comment is very, very difficult. But at the end, I always go back and rewatch the whole stream, and I read every comment. That's how I learn a lot of things, you know, because I understand with the growth of this channel and the amount of people that come through, it's a whole lot of smart people. And that's what I've realized. And I love and I appreciate y'all for that. So with that being said, this is the one and only Stock Sniper. Earn, spend less, make proper investments. And yes, listening to your chat room, to the smart people that's giving you knowledge on what's going on, is an investment. So with that being said, chat, earn, spend less, make proper investments. Teach it to your kids and grandkids. Teach it to your circle. And then you teach it to the world. With that being said, I love and I appreciate y'all. To the next one. I'm out, chat. Y'all have a great night, chat. I had a great time kicking it with y'all. See y'all tomorrow night, chat. I'm out.